Well, hello there everyone. AI Limit Eirene's Furnace of War is the first of the two planned DLC expansions for the game AI Limit, which I consider to be one of the most underrated Souls-likes out there, and one I can highly recommend personally. Longtime viewers know I already made a boss ranking for this game last year, and it was honestly one of my first fairly successful videos. Full disclaimer, this DLC is 100% post-game content. You can't access it until after you've beaten the final boss and seen one of the endings, so there will be spoilers. With that being said, given that this was announced as a gameplay-focused DLC, with the story expansion still being a work in progress, on top of the advertising only really talking about one opponent, I was expecting 3 or 4 bosses max, especially after I saw that the DLC was free. And I thought I'd maybe make a brief video about it, and if I even touched it at all. The DLC has 9 new bosses on top of creating what is essentially inner variants of pre-existing bosses, along with coming with a boss rush mode, great quality of life improvements like being able to equip up to 3 spells at once instead of just 1, and the ability to rematch basically every major boss in the game. There's a ton to talk about here, and it warrants its own little boss ranking on top of giving me the chance to cover the one boss from the base game that I missed in my original ranking. Seriously, for what is a supplemental free DLC update, it is impressive. Not only is the quality of life stuff nice, but making the DLC free is just such a show of goodwill that I've otherwise only seen from the likes of Team Cherry and more recently Sandfall Interactive. And while not all of the boss fights are good, the quality bar is still quite strong, so let's dive on in, shall we? Number 16, the Osprey Twins. Unfortunately, while there are a lot of new bosses, not all of them are good. The Osprey Twins are downright obnoxious, and if you couldn't just overpower them, they'd be dreadful to deal with. Verge is fine. She has a rifle that she can use to keep herself airborne and the occasional follow-up attack, as well as a glaive that has an explosive thrust like a lot of bosses in this game now that I think about it. Gira, on the other hand, is fucking annoying with her submachine gun she can just pull out whenever she wants, and it doesn't really hurt you too much, but it stuns you for a second, leaving you open to getting whacked by Verge, on top of Gira's sword being able to poison you very easily. And I know it's an annoying weapon because I use it as well. It's annoying because the developers have already made a good gank boss in this game, but here there's no way to break aggro or take cover from the gunfire. They can also Spider-Man swing over to your ass and close the distance instantly, and you kinda just have to play reckless because the furnace is getting hotter and hotter, and you've still got one more boss fight after this one before you can turn the world's largest convection oven off. This isn't really a fight you learn the optimal strategy to overcome it. You just kind of get in and become so overpowered that you stomp them in 90 seconds, cause you really don't have time to be wasting on this random gank boss. Number 15, Stone the Coffin Bearer. When I learned we got to fight Old Man Stone, I was kind of excited, and then I fought him. I don't know, it might be a skill issue, but his fight just does not click for me. He's swinging around this coffin like the world's longest ranged hammer, and it's kinda cool, but the timing to everything just feels off. On top of that, you have 4 other butt munches in the arena for some unholy reason, just here to make your life suck, I suppose. They're thankfully fairly passive, but they can get annoying when Stone has basically infinite range in this arena, and is able to easily knock you into the range of the minions, on top of just bludgeoning you over the head with a giant coffin, and you can also just get stunned and knocked over, leaving you in prime pancaking position throughout the entire fight. On top of that, his timings just all feel off because the chain and his coffin is attached to is also a hitbox and does almost as much damage as the coffin itself for some goofy reason. There's also, unfortunately, not really a good chance to actually learn this fight because he sadly cannot be rematched from the regular boss rematch menu. He's just your first roadblock to the final level of the furnace, so you're on a time crunch where he'll become more dangerous the longer the fight drags on, and he can turtle behind his coffin, which is a recipe for disaster. I feel like there could be a good boss here, but I sure as heck haven't found it yet. Number 14, Corrupted Blader Anya. I thought the opponents here were supposed to be based off of Arissa's memories, so who the fuck is this? She's one of the 2 times we've seen a Blader mutate into a Necro, and while Ursula was a fresh mutation, this lady is long gone. It's interesting having an opponent able to utilize a lot of the Necro skills while also still being fairly agile and aggressive like a human combatant, but I don't think this fight really comes together all too well. It feels like she just is playing the random bullshit go card. and her being able to dive under the mud for prolonged periods of times can be quite annoying to deal with in the best of situations, albeit it can lead to funny results when she's poisoned and then she dies when underground because she just teleports above ground again to die. Plus, I don't know, the design evokes Orphan of Kos vibes, and I'm not too big of a fan of the Placenta Man. The fight isn't terrible, but let me just say I prefer the other major boss of this floor over Anya. Number 13, Void Beast. The Void Beast is an opponent that I honestly think should have been the tutorial boss back when the base game began. He has a solid early game moveset and wouldn't be too demanding for a new player to deal with. Here though, he's more or less just a minor speed bump that's meant to be a joke because of, well, he's not meant to be hard. In fact, on your first run through the furnace, he's already been killed by the weaned clergy who takes over the boss slot here. But I'll talk more about that when I get to that point. The fight is perfectly serviceable, but ultimately, it's really just the roadblock that gives you easy upgrades. Number 12, Vikas. I remember originally saying Vikas would be a monster if he ever got an inner variant, and he kinda is. His damage output is absurd, and he has a strong combo game this time around. There's just one small problem, is that this fight seems to be glitched as of now because he just randomly fucking explodes after about a minute and dies. I hope this gets fixed, because also Debs, let him be easily rematchable please, because he has an awesome moveset, but he just doesn't have the health to back it up, though unlike the base game battle, this one doesn't feel intentional, because I don't see why he'd randomly take 790,000 damage out of nowhere when his maximum health is like 20,000. Number 11, Stygian Queen. Remember how I said some of the bosses got major updates giving them effectively inner variants for those that have played Sekiro? Well, one of them was Persephone, and while I love her normal fight, which you can still thankfully battle whenever you want thanks to the boss rematch feature, they went way too overboard with this fight. There was a great flow to the original boss fight, and it all just meshed together really well, with her first phase being this unknowable entity far beyond your comprehension, while her second phase showed this truly ferocious monster, but also a pregnant mother protecting her unborn child. Here, she's just a fucking spaz going absolutely crazy with laser spams and slams that kick up so much mud it can honestly be hard to see what's going on a lot of the time. On top of that, her roar attack can just kinda come out with basically no warning, which inflicts you with infection, making you constantly lose your stability gauge, and if you ever get staggered in this boss fight, there is a 99% chance she'll pull out her shatter laser and just one-shot you. Meaning, if you get hit with infection, which takes forever to wear off, you've effectively got a countdown to death going on. This could have been an excellent boss fight, but it just doesn't feel right. It's the one inner variant I consider an outright downgrade over the original battle, and a significant downgrade at that, because it also doesn't have the first phase from the original fight, and it doesn't have the big explosion attack at the end. It really is just big, scary, savage monster that spams lasers and cosmic attacks. I mean, yeah, there's still some enjoyment here, but I'll stick to the original. Number 10, Necro, Wanderer of the Undersea. This boss is not in the DLC. This is a base game boss that I actually missed during my first playthrough and did not include in my original boss ranking, so I'm talking about it here. This was the giant Necro we saw fight and get destroyed by the winged Colossant, and I totally missed him on my first playthrough. So, how's the fight? Well, it exists. The Wanderer is a fairly passive opponent, surprisingly, only really utilizing 3 attacks, and one of them can't even damage you. That's his little infection pool thing. He only uses lasers if you get up on the top floor, and his orbs are the only attack that require any major level of effort to dodge. Otherwise, his threat comes in the form of him casually walking around to make shockwaves and his ability to spawn in other Necro enemies. Now, as the last Necro you fight in the base game, I guess this could be something of a swan song for the enemy type, but to be honest, I think Persephone and the Spirit Depths did a much better job with that. However, they are still fun enemies to fight, the multi-layered arena is cool, and there is a conveniently placed plank in the arena which will allow you to jump onto his back and take him out from up there, which I think is pretty fun, kind of a Shadow of the Colossus style thing. Personally, I think this battle should have been placed before Persephone, but that multi-layered arena adds a lot to the fight, even if the animation from up top is jank as fuck. Now, it's probably the most truly optional boss in the game. It's not required for any quest lines or endings. It does okay, but it's super easy to miss. I mean, just look at my old boss rankings for proof of that. I think it's fine. It doesn't really evoke any negative feelings. It evokes slightly positive feelings from getting to climb up on him in the cool arena, but that's about it. Number 9, the Two-Faced Constructor. Your introduction to the DLC is interesting to say the least. You head to this new area of the map that recently became unsealed, and from out of the mud comes these weird triangle dudes, except, hold on, they're joining together. This is honestly one of the weirdest fights in the game. It reminds me of those robots Mistral uses in Metal Gear Rising, and I don't know. It's kind of like, what if the duo version of those guys got turned into a boss? Now, the boss has a fair number of surprisingly creative attacks, like bludgeoning you with one another's body, creating an electrical circuit and trying to make you pass through it, whipping one another around, clapping hands. It's a unique boss to be sure, even if it's weird as hell. Definitely odd though that this boss can't be fought until after you've defeated the final boss, because it is nowhere near as difficult as some of the in-game stuff. And it's even odder that you can't refight the boss that's guarding the entrance to the area that lets you refight bosses. I feel like that was an oversight there. Number 8, Flavia, Guardian of the Tree. Flavia is kind of an inner variant, but honestly she's so different from the boss she was originally designed after that she feels like a completely new boss. She's one of the Guardians of the Tree and presumably the leader of the bunch with her special weapon and slightly flashier design. The odd thing is, though, the Tree Guardians are supposed to be stripped of their will, identity, and name. That was kind of the point of Arissa's character, that she was a blank slate given a second chance by pure luck of the draw, and was only given her name thanks to Shirley. But, I don't know. Maybe it has to do with Irene's memories, or maybe Charon bothered to remember the guard captain's name. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. Either way, the fight doesn't really have a bunch of different phases. It's really just one big phase that she'll swap between two different modes. The fight is going to go in heavily with delayed attacks that want to make you panic dodge, and she also has a body buff that reduces her damage taken by about 90%, and it takes its sweet time wearing off. To my knowledge, she only has a single phase, but the battle is all about staggering her to remove the buff. She demands precision from the player, but she's not expecting them to move at a breakneck pace, which I think is okay. I don't think she's a bad fight. In fact, I vastly prefer this fight over the NPC whack-a-mole simulator that was the original Guardians of the Tree. It's a fight that can be fun, it just requires you to adjust to her much slower and more deliberate pacing. Also, the boss theme in this fight is absolutely wild. Dubstep Orchestra was not on my bingo card, but it does stand out and it's far more distinct than any boss theme from the base game. Number 7, Winged Clergy. So the Winged Clergy is a boss you're meant to fight twice. Your first time being whenever you first enter the furnace. She's already killed the Void Beast, and you're the one she's going to take out next. You're not intended to win this boss fight. She's designed to kill you here, and then make you rerun after you've unlocked more mechanics for the Furnace of War, which is fine. This is like literally 2 minutes into it, so who cares? But later in the game, after making it to the second layer of the furnace, we're given a chance for our salty run back. Her design is similar to the Saint enemies found throughout the Hyos Patir, albeit a bit more silvery looking, but I could just be gaslighting myself on that. She might be the exact same design, I don't know. Either way, she can fly through the sky, call down lightning, and has plenty of dancing and flowy combos. It's a very graceful opponent, and while the fight isn't long, I'd say it's a pretty fun battle. And since she more than likely kicked your ass near the start of the DLC, the fight also nails that feeling of payback, albeit not to the same extent as something like the Hunter of Bladers from the base game. Still a fun, if brief fight, and it's a far more enjoyable battle and a floor boss than something like, say, Anya was. Number 6, Phalia. One thing I can appreciate about Eirene being able to form opponents from our memories is that it gives us an opportunity to fight against opponents we'd never realistically fight otherwise. Other than, I guess, maybe in a tournament arc or something like that, but that's not this kind of game. Anyways, Phalia is the textbook small girl with colossal weapon trope that is very popular in anime, which will always be goofy and kind of endearing, but what's cool here is that you can actually see she's using the weapon as a key piece of her repositioning, and the rockets to give her mobility. She may have superhuman strength, but she straight up lacks the mass to move it around with, like, zero effort. And with the weapon drawn normally, she has to get creative. Now this leads to an acrobatic but really fun moveset, admittedly. I'm not sure if I can put it in amazing tier just yet, since her fight is kind of simple compared to the other big fights of the DLC, but since she's an optional challenge that the player can take on and she doesn't really waste your resources other than revives if you go down multiple times, it can be a fair bit of fun. On top of that, I gotta take a minute to praise the music here, which is kind of surprising for this game. Now, the base game soundtrack wasn't bad, but outside of maybe 3 bosses, I don't think I could tell you what song played for what boss. They weren't bad tracks, but they were mostly mood setters and more or less just atmospheric background noise. And not crazy songs to get stuck in your head. Then there's Phalia's boss theme, which sounds like something you'd hear off of a Lindsey Sterling album. The fight doesn't move at a breakneck pace like many others, but it's still one I find very engaging, and I'm impressed that they managed to make the camera not shit itself when facing a boss that is considerably smaller than the player, thanks to her very exaggerated animations. It's a lot better than that one rapier-wielding princess in Kazan the First Berserker, for example. She's not a difficulty juggernaut, but it's not hard to see why Phalia was one of the 3 people able to ascend Hyos Batir and enter the Welkin to confront Loskid, which I'm hoping the second DLC that's supposed to be more story-focused actually follows up on the 2 of them, having, I guess, a reunite in a less violent manner, since both of them are seen to still be alive in the game's true ending. Number 5, Lore the Lost Lancer. What happens when you take an amazing first boss and give him the stats to survive against in-game builds? It remains an amazing first boss fight. To my knowledge, all of his moves are more or less the same from the base game, but he has had some updates to his animations where they're made a bit more exaggerated, albeit staying at the same speed, though I think this is a universal change and not something that's exclusive to the DLC. I'm okay with this though, it makes everything easier to keep track of, and it makes everything in his different attacks far more distinct. Otherwise, it's still the same excellent tutorial boss from the start of the game, just now having more tools in your arsenal and he has more aggression to try and counter it. He hasn't really changed in quality level, he just has more competition now. That's a big reason why I use the tiers in my boss rankings, because this fight is still like a 9 out of 10 boss in my eyes. Number 4, Eirene the Bishop of Warfare. Given the advertising and build-up, I was under the impression that the namesake of the DLC would be the final boss fight. No, it's like the halfway point. Her battle is split into 2 very distinct phases with 2 different health bars, phase 1 having her riding on the back of what looks to be a mutant version of a choir master. The phase has some strong and flashy attacks, but overall it's actually very easy outside of her scary grab attack, and surprisingly, this is actually probably one of the lowest stakes battles in the game. She's the last surviving bishop, and the highest ranking member of, well, the remaining people under Aether's forces. You'd expect her to have some sort of bone to pick with you, but no, she's actually very cordial with you when you meet her, and she asks you to help her with your experiments as a way to find, well, options to combat the Necros. Overall, Phase 1 is just her wanting to have some fun, and it's a warm-up. It's easy, but it's fun, it's not bad, and I'm glad they kind of have something resembling a beast boss, although I guess it's more of a mounted boss here. Plus, it actually does train you for the DLC's final boss, since he will use some similar attacks. But then her health reaches 0 and she pulls out her spear as Phase 2 begins. The battle is kind of how I imagine a witch would fight in a more melee-focused game, with her primarily riding around the arena while being able to slice at you, use spells, and she has just great control over all her weapon and technically her body too, because she can use her legs as a grab attack. Kinky, but creative. Also, yeah, Gooners rejoice, you can in fact unlock her outfit, though personally I want her hat. What can I say, I'm a soldier main. The battle is very different from other foes, but not in a bad way. She's not a boss I've fully nailed down yet, though thankfully you can rematch her whenever you want without needing to run through the furnace again, and honestly, it's nice. She's a hard fight to nail down, but I could see her being much higher up in the future, and I'm already getting better at the fight the more I've practiced against her. The animations are cool, the music is nice and far more orchestral than the base game soundtrack, and she's an interesting character, with her admitting she straight up doesn't understand humans. She holds some curiosity towards them, but her main goal is killing the Necros that endanger the world, and if it keeps the humans safe, hey, that's a nice bonus. Plus, she develops a sync rate during the fight, which prior to this was exclusive to Bladers that we battled. Whether this means she's becoming more and more of a person, or not is anyone's guess, but there's interesting stuff to think about here, and I hope the next expansion fleshes it out at least a little bit. She has some nice interactions with Orisa, and yes, I did intentionally mispronounce her name at the start of the video. Sometimes you gotta troll your audience a little bit. Number 3, Malaire. Honestly, kinda based for Eirene to see Malaire as a far more powerful fighter than she herself. Anyways, I'm okay with these simulacrums being a way to give us boss fights that would otherwise never happen. There's a way you could work a fight with Thalia or Old Man Stone into the story, but Malaire is one of the 3 characters that's more or less a ride or die in your corner by the end of the game, alongside Shirley and Delpha. But as your magic teacher, she's got an arsenal of attacks large enough to make Freyren the Slayer proud, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the fact that the characters don't fight like generic NPCs in this game, outside of the Osprey twins. And they all have their own movesets. Malaire is the most powerful mortal in the game, and it's not even close. With her having mastery over every element in School of Magic, she has every spell in the game except for Persephone's Kamikaze Explosion. Actually, she might have that one too, but she just doesn't use it because, that'd be stupid. The music is super dramatic, and in terms of mage bosses, she's actually one of the best I've seen in any game. Now, the countdown to death can be nerve-wracking with the furnace getting hotter and hotter as the fight goes on, which makes her do more damage, and if it gets to full heat, you'll start taking damage constantly. And yeah, that would be dangerous. Fair. But she's also the last opponent, and beating her turns the furnace off. So it's more a case of just go all out and try to win, because after this you get healed up and you can be prepared for the next fight. It's a thrilling fight that does a great job showing off what Malaire is truly capable of and tells you exactly how she survived mostly on her own for many years. And if you can beat her, you can beat the final boss. Number 2, Inner Eunomia. My original boss ranking of the game listed Eunomia as the worst boss in the game. While I stand by her fight being somewhat of a glitchy mess, especially on launch, I was talking out of my ass with that one. It'd probably be somewhere between 5th and 10th place on the list. Actually, I guess 2 more quick erratas for my old list. I think Aether is actually a pretty good final boss now. I don't think he'd break the top 10, but I'd say he's at the very least good tier. His first phase may be lore fodder, but it's inoffensive and it's not in a Dear the Exiled tier mess because it lasts like 20 seconds. His second phase is actually genuinely a pretty cool battle. The other big one would be Loskid. To my knowledge, there's no difference with her fight in boss rematch mode from her base game fight outside of stats. So she's not getting a unique ranking as an inner variant or anything like that, but after rematching her through this, as well as some save file manipulation back before we got the ability to go in rematch bosses freely, I would say she's far and away the best boss in the base game. Even if she is considerably easier than some of the fights required for the true ending, she's an excellent final challenge that everyone will have to face off against and overcome. Anyways, back to Eunomia. I fought both forms just to verify this, but the battles really are night and day. As her original battle, she just kind of punched forward really quickly, and she'd bring down lightning, and that was about it. Now, she's basically a brawler with comedically large arms and 2 separate command grabs that I would have complained about at first, but they actually have very distinct tells. The lightning bolt slam is an obvious one, just don't get hit by the first slam, but the teleport grab has her tap her fist together, where she'll either use her left hand to taunt you and do nothing, or she'll open up her right hand, which will then spark, and that's your telegraph to dodge the teleport grab. Otherwise, she still loves to punch you and just knock the shit out of you. She can charge at you, and she loves to use her hammer with the ability to pancake you with varying timings, but her delays all work because she throws in these little flourishes with distinct notes of when to dodge once you've learned the animation. Which, it would seem stupid, but they fit her character since Eunomia is a cocky show-off, and Eirene is more than happy to display her deceased sister's cocky nature. The fight moves at a breakneck pace, but it all works well and acts as a great introduction to the bosses having inner variants, since she will be the first one most players come across. Number 1, Prometheus, the Firebearer. Delving into Armageddon, the final layer of the Furnace of War, we face the last challenge Eirene has for us. The White Shroud from Tokyo Xanadu. Okay, maybe not, but it's a reanimation of her late brother Prometheus. If you want a fast-paced boss fight, you will find it here, as this dude is a full-blown battle master, and he can put you through the ringer, on top of being one of the game's 3 bosses that can actually parry you in response to being overly aggressive. Though, hilariously, Prometheus is so tall that while his riposte would normally one-shot a player if their sync gauge was at 0, If he parries you and you get staggered from it, you'll get knocked over, and 9 times out of 10, his riposte will fly right over your head because of how much taller he is than you. It doesn't impact my opinion of the boss fight, it's just funny. And the parry doesn't really come up that often, it's just kind of a thing he can do as a defensive measure. Anyways, the fight is fun, with him having both his longsword similar to Loskid as well as the giant gauntlet. It's clear that, well, he was the original son while Loskid was the successor, and he's also got a spirit bomb attack that you do not want to fuck with. It's a tough fight, but it is an enjoyable one. But of course, this is a post-game boss to cap off the DLC. A second health bar is to be expected as he creates a massive vortex of holy flames and becomes Prometheus, the warfare prototype. Or as I like to call him, Gilgamesh. I'll let you decide which Gilgamesh I'm referring to. He has access to and will utilize every weapon type in the game, from the spear to the sword to the axe to a comedically large gauntlet. This fight is an absolute beast. And for once, I think the Dark Souls 3 boss theme is warranted here, as we're fighting the Lord of Flames. It's just instead of a kiln, we're in a furnace. But in all seriousness, this fight is the most demanding in the game, but the question is, wouldn't he be impossible to find that boss sweet spot since he's at the end of the Furnace of War and therefore you can't easily refight him? You either come in super overpowered and dunk on him, or he's basically impossible? Well, that's where you would be wrong. Going back to Elden Ring Night Rain for a second, Straugas was an awesome boss fight, but he's not one that I want to go back to constantly because it was annoying to get back to him. You'd think that'd be the same here since he's at the end of the roguelike slog. Well, that's where you'd be wrong, because once you've gotten through Armageddon, you can challenge him whenever you want with your own main story build once you've finished his fight in the furnace. This is what gave me a much deeper appreciation for this fight than I otherwise would have had. He's far and away the hardest fight in the game, but is he the best boss? Well, I'm not 100% sure. He's definitely the flashiest of the big in-game fights, but I'd say Loskid and maybe even Ursula both carry that same distinct fun factor, and I'm gonna have to rematch these fights a couple times to be sure, but luckily that's something I can relatively easily do now thanks to this update. And yeah, just as a spoiler, I 100% plan on doing a big re-ranking of this entire game once the final DLC comes out, but that'll be a bridge we cross to when we get to it. And that's all I've got for this video. I'm honestly blown away by how high effort this DLC expansion was. I can understand being disappointed if you wish to continue the plot, but the developers said this one was intended to be gameplay focused with a more traditional story expansion currently being worked on. This was kind of just a supplement or something to tie you over. And again, this DLC is completely free, coming with new bosses, inner variants of old bosses, a boss rematch feature, a roguelike mode that's honestly better than Night Rain because you dictate the pace of it, some amazing new music, a few more weapons to play around with, as well as new outfits for cosplay lovers of the group. It's not my favorite DLC by any means, but it's still fun and a very substantial product and a show of goodwill from the developers that I haven't seen outside of Team Cherry and more recently Sandfall Interactive. Overall, this DLC ain't perfect, but it's a fun time, and that's far more substantial than a free update has any right to be, and it's kinda nice to be back to this game. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking, subscribing, and hyping the video, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care.